afternoon. I think first and foremost, good afternoon, distinguished guests, and thank you to the Huawei team, and thanks to the ADGM for having me here. We've all been talking about cloud, we've been talking about fintech, we've been talking about emerging technologies. I'll talk about the slightly boring part, but the most important part in this entire ecosystem, which is compliance, regulation, and protection, right? So with that, let me start. Uh, you know, I mean, just to give you a brief on Utimaco, we are a German headquartered company, been in business for 50 years. We do various things around data protection. We work on areas of blockchain, which we have heard today. We work on key management. We work on quantum security. We work on cloud security. We work on PKI, device attestation, in multiple cases. Now, these may seem terms which are alien, but let me get it into a fintech context and a cloud context. So let me jump into the fintech space. I mean, today, if we look at the fintech space, I mean, fintech is anywhere, valued at around, global market space is around 200 billion today, but by 2030, we are talking about 700 billion. If we look at Asia Pacific, today we contribute around 35% of this fintech space. But in the next 3 years, we are expected to occupy more than 50% of the fintech space globally. So when we talk about the challenges that are coming in this space, one is, of course, your ransomware, right? I mean, this is happening. Data breaches, right? I mean, data breaches is something which is impacting all of us every day. Phishing and social engineering attacks. I mean, we are getting on the social media. Everything is getting digital. There are emergence of new technologies, and this becomes very significant. We're in the Middle East, right? We're in UAE. I mean, data is the new oil, right? I mean, and personal data theft is becoming a big issue, right? I mean, a lot of governments, a lot of enforcement agencies are kind of revisiting their data policies. And as fintechs and as custodians, we need to make sure that the data is secure, right? We've heard about the big Equifax case where there was a 0-day breakage, right? I mean, so 0-day can happen, right? I mean, it can happen now, it can happen anytime in the future, right? So these are the challenges. So as fintech companies, as ecosystem providers, how are we standing up to these challenges and how do we cater to them is something that we need to know. So being in the fintech space, right? I mean, there are various regulatory requirements that we would have, right? One is the regulated entity compliances, right? As fintechs or as service providers, we have to increasingly work with the regulator, right? And there's a set of regulations which are there in every country, right? There is the personal data protection bills which are there, which are again different from everywhere. And as fintech, PCI compliance, Payment Council standards, these are super, super important. I mean, as fintech, we cannot compromise this space. And as service providers, we need to adhere to these security requirements, right? I mean, this is where we come in. This is where, our solution with Huawei Cloud kind of comes in. So let me delve into it. So globally, what our appeal to fintechs is that you focus on your core business, which is creating a new product, which is expanding your portfolio, acquiring your customers, right? And, as a security specialist in the world and along with Huawei, what we would like to take care of you is your entire security headache, right? Cloud security, right? I mean, Andrew and Alex did speak about the offerings of Huawei Cloud, but there is also security of the cloud. The regulator also asks you as fintech and also asks you as banks to have custody of your own keys, right? Otherwise, how do you manage your data and your keys, right? So we have a bring your own key kind of a concept, which is prevalent in most of the cloud service providers. This can kind of take care of your complete key management and your data protection aspects, right? Tokenization, we have heard about tap and pay. I mean, Arjun spoke about embedded pay, your Apple Pay and all these things, right? You have your tap and pays which are there. You have your card on files which are there. So which means you need tokenization, right? So these are some of the services that we would provide, right? You have database encryption, right? I mean, today as fintechs, right? And in the good old days, we used to store the records for 10 years, 15 years in a piece of paper. They are lying in a warehouse, but now these records are being stored digitally, right? you have the PQC algorithms which are almost broken, right? And there are new mandates. So most of your systems need to be PQC ready, in the next 3 to 5 years. So what we do is we provide the PQC security as well, so that in the next 3 to 5 years you'll be ready for your business enhancements, right? Most common is your PIN security, right? I mean, when you're doing your payments, right, you need your PIN security. So that's a service we have, right? If you're a merchant acquirer, if you're a, today we think of merchant acquiring as only point of sale terminal or let's say a QR. But with the advent of IoT, you'll have your gas station as a merchant acquirer, your car as a merchant acquirer. And with the complete IoT of things, your key injection and your security of the device becomes very, very important. So what we would say is, as fintechs, right, you kind of focus on your core competency, which is building your product, sticking, acquiring your customers, right, maintaining your basic regulatory compliances. As security service providers, right, we help you in doing all of these, right? Today, you don't have to build an infrastructure dedicated within your house to take care of all of this. I mean, I have been a former entrepreneur. I've run 2 fintech companies myself. And for me, this was my biggest headache, right? So, what we want to do is simplify the life of fintechs, right? At the same time, we want to ensure that you stick to the compliances which are required by the law of the land and which are required by the Payment Council. And, while we have this globally, we would be launching this with Huawei in the Middle East, wherein all of these services or all of these offerings will be offered in Huawei Cloud as a service. So as a fintech company, you can just subscribe to the cloud. You can subscribe to a particular service and make your life easier. Focus on your core business, whereas we help you on your security aspects. I'll quickly wrap up. I have 2 minutes. So what I'm saying is that, for our customers, it will be like a simple menu, right? I mean, you want a PKI, you click for it. You want hardware security modules, you click on it. You want timestamping on your certificates or your documentation, you click on it, right? You want to encrypt your database, you want to do your key processing, or you want to issue certificates. You can subscribe to one service or multiple services with a click of a button. So we are trying to enable the entire payment and the fintech ecosystem with this. What we are also seeing is a lot of emerging banks in the world, right? I mean, if I go to some of our customers, right? I mean, we are serving over 350 to 400 customers worldwide. And, many of our customers, including payment schemes, including large service providers, large digital banks or large banks, are also moving into this model. Because at the end of the day, as a fintech, you may have to be connected with a bank as a regulated entity before you work with the regulator, right? So many of the banks are also with the emerging trends. There are various guidelines. For example, Europe, you have PSD2, right, where you're sharing databases. So a lot of middleware guidelines are going to be followed. And at the same time, banks also don't want to miss on this space. So there is a lot of collaboration which is happening, and which is where a lot of the banks and a lot of payment service providers are moving into this space. So this is a trend we are increasingly seeing, right? So with all of this, what we want to do is we want to ensure the whole lifecycle security, right, of the entire payments world, of the entire fintech world, so that, you can focus on your stuff, whereas we take care of the regulatory requirements. I think 10 minutes this is what I could cover, but we'll be very happy to talk outside. We'll be very happy to, discuss with you on what we can do on the security side, right from consulting to adaptation to growth. So happy to collaborate, and thanks for having me here. And yeah, thank you.